What happens aback Hollywood's best allegorical boxy guy walks into a den of daytime television hosts who anticipate they can advance him around? Well, you're about to acquisition out. And assurance me, this is one battle you won't see coming. Clint Eastwood, the man who fabricated careers out of staring bottomward bad guys and accustomed amends with a whisper, begin himself face to face with Joy Behar in what started as an accepted promotional appearance, but bound coiled into television chaos. Before we dive into this atomic encounter, accomplish abiding you hit that subscribe button and bead a animad version beneath because this adventure is activity to leave you speechless. The cameras formed alive, and Whoopi Goldberg smiled acquiescently at their guest. Ladies and gentlemen, amuse acceptable the allegorical Clint Eastwood. She appear as the flat admirers erupted in applause. Eastwood nodded affably as he acclimatized into his chair, his aspirus easily comatose calmly on the armrests. Thank you for accepting me, he said in that apparent growly voice. So Clint, acquaint us about your latest project, Whoopi continued, befitting things ablaze and professional. What drew you to this accurate story? Well, it's about additional chances, Eastwood replied thoughtfully. Sometimes bodies deserve addition advance at redemption, alike a back amalgamation has accounting them off. Sarah Haynes leaned advanced with 18-carat interest. That's such a admirable theme. How do you accept which belief to acquaint at this date in your absurd career? I attending for truth? Eastwood answered simply. Stories that say article absolute about the animal condition. Hollywood's got abundant fantasy. The chat flowed artlessly for several account with Eastwood administration, insights about his administering action, and alive with actors. The flat admirers was acutely captivated by his attendance and wisdom. But Joy Behar had been almighty quiet, sitting aback in her armchair with a alive smile. She had been cat and mouse for her moment, and now she saw it. Clint, can I ask you something? Joy interjected, her accent alive noticeably. You allocution about accuracy and redemption. But don't you anticipate some of your able comments about assertive political abstract's ability belie that message? The temperature in the flat seemed to bead several degrees. Whoopi advanced Joy a admonishing glance, but it was too late. Eastwood's eyes narrowed hardly as he angered to face Joy directly. Which comments would those be, Joy? Oh, you know, Joy said with apocryphal sweetness. Your abutment for politicians who shall abide nameless, but who accept fabricated some appealing ambiguous statements about women and minorities. I don't anamnesis authoritative any statements that disparaged women or minorities. Eastwood replied evenly, his articulation accustomed animate bend that cine audiences knew well. But by association, Joy apprenticed on, acutely adequate herself. Don't you anticipate your political endorsements accelerate a message? The added hosts exchanged afflictive glances. This wasn't the administration anyone had planned for the account to go. Eastwood angular aback in his armchair and anchored Joy with a beam that could accept Arctic water. Adolescent lady, I've been in this business aback afore you were born. I've formed with bodies of every background, every political persuasion, and I adjudicated them by their character, not their affair affiliation. Young lady, Joy's articulation rose an octave. Excuse me, but I anticipate I accept every appropriate to ask boxy questions of my guests. And I accept every appropriate not to acknowledgement antic questions from addition who's added absorbed in creating altercation than accepting a conversation. Eastwood advanced back, his calm address never clashing admitting the bend in his voice. Joy's face ablaze red. Gotcha questions? I'm allurement about your accessible statements, Clint. That's alleged journalism. Is that what we're calling it now? Eastwood replied with a slight cackle that somehow fabricated the insult alike added cutting. In my day, journalism complex analysis and facts, not fishing expeditions. Whoopi approved to intervene. Let's maybe get back to talking about your film, Clint, but Joy wasn't abetment down. No, I anticipate this is important. You can't aloof appear on television and apprehend softball questions, aback you've fabricated arguable political statements, such as Eastwood's articulation remained steady. But his eyes had that alarming glint that anyone who'd watched his movies would recognize. Well, there was that able abandoned armchair thing, Joy said smugly, apropos to a political assemblage actualization from years earlier. You beggarly aback I acclimated a artistic allegory to accomplish a point about political accountability. Eastwood replied, yeah, I bethink that, what about it? Don't you anticipate it was a little, I don't know, unhinged? Joy pressed, acutely cerebration she had begin her angle. The flat admirers was asleep bashful now. Alike the aggregation associates had chockfull moving, analysis that article cogent was happening. Eastwood leaned advanced slightly, his articulation bottomward to that buzz quiet accent that was somehow added alarming than shouting. Joy, let me ask you something. How abounding films accept you made? What does that accept to do with anything? Joy advance aback defensively. Aloof acknowledgement the question. How abounding films accept you directed, produced, or starred in? That's not the point. I'm a television host and comedian. Right. And how abounding Academy Awards accept you won? Joy's articulation was accepting higher. Again, that's not accordant to this discussion. How about this then? Eastwood continued, his accent acceptable added pointed. How abounding careers accept you launched? How abounding adolescent actors accept you accustomed their aboriginal break? How abounding belief accept you told that absolutely meant article to people? I absorb bodies every day on this show, Joy replied, but her aplomb was acutely shaking. Do you? Eastwood asked with 18-carat curiosity. Because from area I'm sitting, it looks like you ambuscade guests and try to actualize altercation for ratings. Is that your abstraction of entertainment? Sarah Haynes jumped in, aggravating to lighten the mood. Clint, your films accept entertained millions of bodies about the world. What's been the best advantageous allotment of your career, but Eastwood wasn't accessible to let Joy off the angle yet? You perceive what, Sarah? I'll acknowledgement that. The best advantageous allotment has been alive with professionals. Bodies who accept that account is earned, not demanded. People who don't adumbrate a BAFTA console of co-hosts to booty bargain shots at their guests. Joy's aperture fell open. Bargain shots? I'm allurement accepted questions about your political views. No, Eastwood adapted her. You're aggravating to actualize a viral moment for your amusing media clips. There's an aberration amid allurement about someone's angle and aggravating to ambuscade them. I'm not ambushing anyone, Joy protested. I'm accomplishing my job. Your job is to account guests about why they're here. Eastwood replied calmly. I came actuality to allocution about a blur I'm appreciative of, or adventure about accretion and additional chances. You appetite to allocution about backroom and actualized drama? Whoopee fabricated addition, advanced to beacon the conversation. The blur does complete fascinating, Clint. Can you acquaint us about the capital character? It's about a man who's fabricated mistakes, Eastwood said, his eyes still bound on Joy. But who's aggravating to do better? Sometimes the bigger obstacles aren't the ones in advance of you, but the bodies who appetite to accumulate you authentic by your able, instead of absolution you grow. The allegory wasn't absent on anyone in the studio, atomic of all joy, who was acutely accepting added agitated by the minute. That's an admirable message, Sarah said, acutely aggravating to accumulate things on track. Redemption is such a able affair in storytelling, but Joy wasn't about to let the moment pass. Speaking of redemption, don't you anticipate some bodies are above it? I mean, a back addition consistently supports alienated politics. At what point do we stop giving them chances? Eastwood's jaw anchored about imperceptibly. Are we talking about the actualization in my film, or are you aggravating to accomplish this claimed again? I'm talking about accountability, Joy replied with apocryphal righteousness. Public abstracts accept a albatross to their fans, do they now? Eastwood's articulation agitated that alarming quiet that anyone accustomed with his movies would recognize. And what albatross do television hosts accept to their guests? To ask the boxy questions that matter? Joy advanced aback immediately. No, Eastwood said firmly. To amusement bodies with basal animal decency. Article you assume to accept forgotten. The added hosts exchanged afraid glances. Whoopi was aimlessly aggravating to arresting the producers, but Joy was too bent up in what she anticipation was her moment of triumph. Human decency? Joy laughed harshly. That's affluent advancing from Addition who spent decades arena agitated characters and glorifying gun culture. The flat admirers gasped audibly. Even by the appearance standards, this was bridge a line. Eastwood sat aback in his armchair and advised Joy for a connected moment, as if seeing her acutely for the aboriginal time. You perceive what your botheration is, Joy. Enlighten me, she replied sarcastically. You anticipate actuality loud makes you right. You anticipate actuality confrontational makes you brave. But all it absolutely makes you is a annoyer ambuscade a BAFTA microphone. Excuse me. Joy's articulation able a angle that fabricated anybody in the flat WCs. You heard me? Eastwood continued, his articulation absolute, abiding, and controlled. You sit actuality, day afterwards, day demography, shots at bodies who can't action a back finer because they're guests on your show. You anticipate that makes you powerful, but it aloof makes you small. How cartel you alarm me small. Joy stood up from her chair, her face ablaze red with rage. I've been accomplishing this job for years. I've interviewed presidents, celebrities, Apple leaders, and how abounding of them larboard actuality activity like they'd been advised with respect. Eastwood asked pointedly, how abounding absolved a broad cerebration that was a able interview? Joy was sputtering now. I don't accept to booty this from you or anyone else. You're absolutely right, Eastwood agreed calmly. You don't accept to booty annihilation from me. Aloof like I don't accept to sit actuality and let you about face what should accept been a chat about art into your claimed political theater. Whoopi assuredly begin her voice. Clint Joy, maybe we should all booty a animation here. No, Whoopi, Eastwood said continuing up slowly. I anticipate joy and I accept anniversary added altogether now. Joy was about cavernous with anger. You can't aloof airing out of an account because you don't like the questions. Watch me, Eastwood replied with that iconic squint. I came actuality as a address to allocution about article I affliction about. I didn't appear actuality to be your punching bag for the day. This is a live television, Joy protested. You can't aloof leave, can't I? Eastwood asked, already extensive for his microphone. See, that's addition affair you don't understand, Joy. Real ability isn't about cornering addition on a live television. Absolute ability is alive a back to airing away. If you leave now, you'll attending like you can't handle boxy questions, Joy said desperately. Analysis her moment bottomward away. Eastwood paused and looked anon into the Capitol camera. Folks watching at home, I came actuality to allocution about a blur that agency article to me. Instead, I got ambushed by addition added absorbed in viral clips than absolute conversation. That tells you aggregate you charge to a perceive about the accompaniment of television today. Afresh he angry aback to Joy. As for administration boxy questions, lady, I've been administration boxy questions, aback afore you knew what a microphone was. The aberration is they were usually asked by professionals. Joy's face was now amethyst with rage. You aloof has been. You anticipate you can aloof insult me on my own show? The words afraid in the air like a slap. The flat admirers was absolutely silent. The added hosts looked mortified, and alike the aggregation associates were staring in shock. Eastwood boring angry aback to face Joy. And for a moment, his announcement was absolutely like the characters he'd played in dozens of westerns, calm and dangerous, and absolutely done with the situation. Has been, he afresh quietly. That's absorbing advancing from addition, whose bigger affirmation to acclaim is sitting at a table talking about added people's accomplishments. The blackout that followed was deafening. You could apprehend a pin bead in the flat as anybody candy what Joy had aloof said. Eastwood's announcement didn't change, but somehow the air about him seemed to burst with energy. Has been, he afresh boring as if tasting the words. You know, Joy, in all my years in this business, I've been alleged a lot of things, but usually by bodies who had able article themselves. Joy able she had gone too far, but pride wouldn't let her back down. I've able plenty. Thank you absolute much. Except you? Eastwood asked, his articulation bottomward to that buzz that was somehow added alarming than screaming. Let's see. You've managed to insult how abounding guests over the years, created how abounding controversies, destroyed how abounding interviews that could accept been elusive conversations. I asked the questions that charged to be asked, Joy replied, but her articulation was afraid now. No, Eastwood adapted her. You ask the questions that get you attention. There's an aberration amid journalism and achievement art, and you assume to accept abandoned which one you're declared to be doing. Whoopi fabricated one final atrocious advance to deliver the situation. Clint, maybe we can alpha over. Joy, why don't you apologize and we can get back to discussing the film? Joy Apple on Whoopi. Apologize for what? For accomplishing my job. Your job, Eastwood interjected, is declared to be absorbing and allegorical your audience, not advancing your guests for sport. I wasn't advancing you, Joy protested weakly. Eastwood laughed, and it was not a affable sound. Lady, I've been in absolute combat. I perceive what an advance looks like. The aberration is a back addition, attacked me in the service. At Atomic, they had the adventuresomeness to do it to my face, instead of ambuscade, abaft a television appearance format. The added hosts were now above board staring at Joy, with expressions alignment from embarrassment, to disgust. Sarah looked like she capital to clamber beneath the table. Alike the flat admirers was alive uncomfortably in their seats. You anticipate you're so tough? Joy said, her articulation breaking slightly. Well, let me acquaint you something, Mr. Eastwood. This is my house. These are my rules, and if you don't like my questions, you can leave. Eastwood smiled. And it was the coldest smile anyone in that flat had any time seen. Your house, your rules, you perceive what, Joy? You're absolutely right. This is your house, and that's absolutely the problem. He stood up absolutely now, aerial over the built-in panel. In your house, guests get ambushed. In your house, altercation agency disrespect. In your house, creating ball is added important than creating understanding. Well, congratulations. You've congenital yourself absolutely abode there. Joy was about sputtering. If you anticipate you can aloof flit in actuality and address me about television, you've got addition affair coming. I'm not lecturing you about television, Eastwood replied calmly. I'm pointing out that what you do isn't television. It's a bazaar and you're the arch clown. The draft from the admirers was audible, alike by daytime television standards. This was unprecedented. How cartel you? Joy shrieked. Absolutely accident any pretense of professionalism. How cartel you appear on my appearance and insult me like this? Your show? Eastwood looked about at the added hosts. Funny, I anticipation this was declared to be a console appearance with assorted hosts. Turns out it's aloof the Joy Behar ego hour with some advancement singers. Whoopi assuredly begin her backbone. Clint, that's enough. Joy, you charge to calm bottomward appropriate now. But Joy was above reason. Don't acquaint me to calm down, Whoopi. This man comes in actuality with his holier-than-thou attitude and thinks he can boldness me on civic television. The alone being whose apparent boldness here, Eastwood said quietly, is you. From the moment I sat down, you've been attractive for action instead of accepting a conversation. I was accomplishing my job, Joy repeated. But the words articulate alveolate now. No. Eastwood befuddled his arch slowly. Your job would be allurement me about my work, my process, maybe alike my opinions on things accompanying to film. Your job would be authoritative your admirers feel like they abstruse article or were entertained by article worthwhile. He gestured against the cameras. Instead, you've spent the aftermost 20 account aggravating to abash a bedfellow who came actuality in acceptable faith, and you've succeeded in awkward yourself and your appearance instead. Joy looked about badly for support, but begin none. The added hosts were agilely alienated her gaze. The admirers was acutely on Eastwood's side, and alike the aggregation associates were afraid their heads. Fine, she said finally, her articulation cracking. If you don't appetite to acknowledgement absolute questions, afresh maybe you shouldn't be accomplishing interviews. Eastwood was already removing his microphone, but he paused at those words. Real questions, you appetite to perceive what a absolute catechism sounds like, Joy? He looked anon into the capital camera again. A absolute catechism would be, what drives you to accumulate authoritative films at your age? A absolute catechism would be, what admonition would you accord to adolescent filmmakers? A absolute catechism would be, what adventure are you best appreciative of telling? A freshy angry aback to Joy. But those questions crave you to absolutely affliction about the answers, and we both perceive you don't. The flat was so quiet you could apprehend the camera operator's breathing. Joy looked like she capital to say article else, but for already in her career, she seemed to be at a accident for words. You perceive what the saddest allotment of all this is? Eastwood continued, his articulation about affable now. You had a adventitious to accept a absolute chat with addition who's lived through decades of American cinema history. Instead, you chose to comedy go to ABC Darian like an ABC Darian blogger, attractive for clicks. He accomplished removing his microphone and set it anxiously on the table. That's not aloof a decay of your time and mine, it's a decay of your audience's time. They deserve bigger than this achievement you've been putting on. Joy assuredly began her articulation again, but it came out as a screech. Don't you cartel address me about what my admirers deserves. I've been abutting with admirers for decades. Have you? Eastwood asked as he straightened his jacket. Or except you aloof been babble at them for decades? Because there's a aberration amid abutting with bodies and aloof authoritative noise. The producers were aimlessly signaling from abaft the cameras, acutely aggravating to amount out how to handle this aberrant situation. This was a live television, and their bigger bedfellow was walking out afterwards, absolutely dismantling one of their hosts. Security, Joy alleged out desperately. Get security. Eastwood laughed absolutely for the aboriginal time aback the account began. Security? What are they activity to do? Joy, arrest me for affliction your feelings? He looked about the flat one added time, demography in the abashed faces of anybody present. You know, I've been in this business for over 60 years. I've formed with the best directors, the finest actors, the best able crews in the world, and in all that time, I've never encountered anyone absolutely like you. Is that declared to be a compliment? Joy asked sarcastically, aggravating badly to achieve some ascendancy of the situation. Take it about you want, Eastwood replied. But aloof remember, a back body's allocution about this account tomorrow, they're not activity to be talking about your boxy questions or your journalistic integrity. They're activity to be talking about how you absolutely absent your accord and ashamed yourself on a live television. With that adverse final blow, Clint Eastwood absolved calmly against the flat exit, abrogation abaft a console of abashed hosts, a abashed audience, and one absolutely ashamed Joy Behar, who was still aggravating to amount out how she had absent ascendancy so completely. As the flat doors bankrupt abaft him, the cameras captured Joy's face red with acerbity and embarrassment, while the added hosts sat in abashed silence. Alive, they had aloof witnessed television history, but not the affectionate anyone would appetite to be remembered for. So, there you accept it, folks. What started as an accepted promotional account, angry, into one of the best atomic confrontations in daytime television history. Clint Eastwood accepted that alike in his nines, he's still the fastest draw in Hollywood. Except this time his weapon was words, not bullets. Accomplish abiding to subscribe for added absurd belief like this one. And let me a perceive in the comments, do you anticipate Joy Behar assuredly met her match?